Now that we're getting ready to go open source, we thought it'd be useful to put everything in one place. The last video was about the launcher specifically, where we reached a 62% win rate. Today we're going to be talking about its capabilities in general though. And we're going to do that with a tier list. This is not going to be a serious scientific tier list. Instead, it's just going to be a fun way to introduce its capabilities and provide some context for where the bot is, which might be interesting to you as a viewer, and it might also be useful to someone who is trying to modify its behavior when it's open source. Logan, hello, you're here too.
I am here. Happy to be here. Always fun to be a part of a tier list.
Ironclad, he was our first character. We had a very simple strategy with him, which was pick up cards and bash people in the face with them. And
that is Ironclad's strength.
We haven't gone back and actually done anything really good with the rest of the behavior we've built into the bot. So, like, he will know about strength, but he won't prioritize it to build it up over the course of a longer fight, for example. Exhaust works, but it's not used strategically yet. What are you thinking?
I would vote C tier for Ironclad, actually.
Yeah, and in case we didn't touch on our methodology yet, I think we're going to be rating based on how happy we are with this stuff, right?
Yeah, more or less. Maybe potential reached also could be a rule of thumb for it.
Yeah.
I mean, let's start with all the characters then. So Silent next.
Alrighty. Ooh, yeah. So
you get to pick this one.
I get to pick this one. So I'm going to go to B, but I'm okay with you arguing me elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with Silent, we had quite a few of the cards implemented. So with Ironclad, we originally only implemented about like 2/3 of the cards, somewhere between half and 2/3 when we started getting wins. And if you go back and look at our original video, I think it was an 18% win rate that we had with that. But with Silent, we implemented basically all of them. There were a couple of tricky ones that we didn't get to, but yeah, she had quite a bit of coverage, and that gave her a lot more flexibility. But yeah, she still does not know how to use poison well. And then we also start getting into one of the unfortunate limitations of the bot, and that is the amount of card plays, adding to the complexity of the hand and making it just take forever to process. And because of that, we had to start limiting the bot's creativity. It couldn't just play, like, think of any potential path that it could be playing throughout a hand. It had to start limiting it, which meant that shivs started getting really expensive. So although Silent can do a lot of cool things with it, you also, first with her, are able to actually start seeing some of the bot's limitations for memory and processing there.
Speaking of memory and processing, let's talk about defects.
I mean, we know about Claw. Practically, I would put Defect in B tier as well.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of power that... I mean, Defect is just a very powerful character, especially in low ascensions, if you're playing well with the powers and just picking up in general strong cards. So, yeah, I feel because of that, Defect has a quite good performance.
Any big areas we're still missing with Defect?
Random.
Yeah, random.
This is another limitation of the bot in general, is that, again, because of processing power, we're not trying to calculate like every potential path that could happen. And Defect is the first character, and the main character, that has random as an intrinsic part of their kit, with the lightning bolt strikes primarily, but also a couple of other cards.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we have some okay ways of handling this that kind of mimic how we would do it as a human, I think, where you kind of look at like what's potentially the least impactful path in a way, or you just kind of throw off to the side, yeah, I have 14 potential lightning damage that'll come in somewhere. But yeah, it does mean that we run into some limitations for what we can do creatively with Defect.
There's also just some missing mid and long-term planning, I think, with Defect in the fights.
Yeah, definitely.
Stuff that we could integrate, or one of you viewers could integrate, if we're looking carefully at, okay, this is going to be a big fight, so let's play a little bit more conservatively with expanding our orbs all the time, for example, or let's focus on holding on to some frost orbs and not so many lightning orbs. I'm just throwing stuff out there right now. I don't know exactly what we need to be done here. I'm also not very good with Defect, But I think something could be done there to improve its performance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when we're talking about like the standard boss and elite fights, later we can get into that part a bit more, because scaling is an entire question in and of itself, and by default, like Defect is the character that scales the most and considers scaling the most, so that's quite relevant.
And that's a good segue to Watcher. I want to place Watcher in A. I'm not sure if that's fully deserved, because I feel like with Watcher, the bot is able to benefit a lot from Watcher just having a large amount of damage she can output if you're willing to do the math. And the bot is absolutely willing to do the math.
The bot loves to do the math.
Loves doing the math, in fact, yes. And so I'm not sure if Watcher fully deserves to be in A tier here. I'm pretty happy with her, though. The coverage is really great. It looks like we're using a lot of her mechanics. I feel pretty good about her.
Yeah, I'd totally be in agreement with that. It's a bit unfortunate that we're not able to properly get things like infinites and that sort of thing into the bot's understanding yet. Maybe someday. So that would be one of the main things that's keeping it away from S tier for me. But yeah, it plays very solidly with Watcher, and I also like to a point how willing it is to use some of those one-shot cards, like its extra energy, or like the calm and wrath cards that retain. I find myself very often holding on to those a lot more frequently than I need, and it's just really happy to go out there and play them. And it's like, oh, maybe I need to learn from the bot a bit on that one.
I think for me, the biggest thing, or one of the big things keeping it back from S tier is it knows about card draw. It's willing to make use of card draw. Sometimes you shouldn't lean on card draw giving you the cards you need, though. Because sometimes you can even guarantee you almost that you're not going to get the cards you need, and the bot will still kind of lean into the card draw. We've covered a lot of characters now, and we've talked a little bit about the bot's capabilities in each. Maybe now's a good time to talk a bit about how the bot learns new things.
How it learns new things.
Yeah, we're representing that with this card here, Lesson Learned.
Very fitting.
I'm going to say C tier.
C tier. So what kind of learning does the bot do, Robert?
Well, one of us sits down, decides a new rule that the bot should behave, and then types on their keyboard in a way that the computer can understand, so in a programming language, and eventually the bot behaves as it should after we've bashed our head against it a few times.
Yeah, so I can understand that, but as an engineer, I have to vote for F, because technically the bot does not learn.
Care to expand?
Yeah. So this is a question that's come up in a number of comments on our different videos, is like what kind of algorithms we're using for training this. There's a lot of questions about training. And someone asked earlier, actually, if the bot is pure clockwork. And I like that term. So yes, the bot is pure clockwork. All that it is like algorithms that we have programmed ourselves, just using a lot of like heuristics and some graph problems. There's not actually any machine learning that has taken place in the bot. Machine learning can actually be a very difficult thing to apply to very heavy decision space strategy sort of situations, like games like this, and they tend to take like a lot of training power and to be effective at all. So instead of going that route, we just went the entire clockwork situation, which means that there's no innate learning actually in the bot. It has to be taught everything by us.
Right, you are, but we don't have to teach it everything very specifically. So
that's true.
If we can segue over to the wonderful example of finding lethal with Blasphemy, I'm going to put that up in S, because the way we teach it things is we teach it, this is a desired battle outcome, trying to achieve this outcome, and we teach it how different card plays or relics will affect this card outcome. I keep using the word teach here, but anyway, the bot knows that Blasphemy will triple its damage. The bot knows how much damage it can do with everything in its hand. It knows that it can pull cards from discard if needed, with the stance changing for Flurry of Blows, for example. It knows the counter of all the relics, and so it finds Blasphemy if it's there, and it's really good. And we didn't need to teach it. We don't need to sit there and explain every case of Blasphemy to it, but we teach it about Blasphemy, and then the bot knows, oh, I can kill here.
Yeah, we can do Thorns next.
Yeah, so it wasn't even intended only Thorns, it was more intended as disrespectful passive kills. So there's the Lightning kills, there's the Thorns kills, there's the transient dying to itself.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely, the bot's disrespect is S tier. So in the general way that we've hooked up these battle comparators to like be deciding what plays it should be making, we've told it that in general, unless there's a reason to be playing cards, prefer to play fewer cards. So if there's certain relics, it might like playing cards more, to be stacking different relic counters or that sort of thing. But if there's not a reason to play a card, it won't. And so it's very happy to let enemies die to its thorns because, hey, it didn't play a card. So it feels that it's being more efficient. Yeah, and for that, its disrespect is pretty off the charts.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mouse here. I would agree that its disrespect is S tier, but the actual execution of the disrespect I have to bump down to A tier because there's still one or two cases I've seen where the bot will think, oh, I have the Thorn skill. It's fine. I'm going to go do something else now. And it won't get the Thorn skill because the enemy was getting blocked. We're getting block applied to it from someone else before it attacks, for example.
Gotcha.
Which
okay, so like if it's up against the cleric and the paladin or whatever it is, and there's a block being applied.
Or Dono and Deka, or there's a few different scenarios where it can happen.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can see that fallacy coming in.
And I see it and I'm like, that's not exactly the type of error I would make, but I would be making errors like it. We've been positive a bit now. Can you find something that makes us feel worse about ourselves in the bot?
Yeah, let's go to the thing all the way on the right there, that potion.
All right. Where do you want it?
The part of me that's played thousands of hours of this game wants to put it in F tier. The part of me that goes, oh, good job, you threw a potion, wants me to put it in C tier.
So where do you most often throw your potions, Logan?
I tend to use potions most on elites and on bosses.
Where does the bot throw potions?
It eats all of them that it can at the boss.
Yeah,
that's its potion strategy.
It technically could also, it might also panic throw them on elites if it reaches certain health threshold. That doesn't happen very often. I'm in camp. Potions are awesome, and what else are you going to do with a ritual potion except toss it at the boss on your first turn?
Yeah, that's a general good use of ritual potion. It's not the best use of a gambler's brew, or an entropic potion when you already have your potion belt full of other potions. But hey, it's a start. It's something.
We have unfortunately used the entropic potion icon to represent potions, so that's an argument downwards at least. So just to be clear, I'm arguing C tier, not anything above that.
Yeah, it's either high F or low C. There's so much potential still that could happen with potions. I mean,
that's true.
I guess that you don't really feel it until the higher ascensions as much, but potions are basically your cover for bad luck. If you haven't been fortunate enough to get the cards that you need to be able to tackle the early elites, if you have a particularly bad hand draw, the potions are what helps mitigate that. And so they're one of the things that can add a lot of consistency to your run. And the bot just has no clue how to apply those. I think that using potions well is one of the higher skill, quote unquote, things in the game. And that would still take a lot of learning for the bot to apply it well.
I want to make one correction to your statement. The bot knows exactly how fairy in a bottle works. Let's put pathing somewhere, shall we? Pathing works by looking at the map nodes that are ahead, looking at our player state, and deciding the path that has the most reward and least pain. So we know that a hallway fight is going to cost us some HP, we know that an elite fight is going to cost us some HP, but we're also going to get some reward for the elite fight. We're going to get a reward if we go to the shop, but maybe we don't want to go to the shop if we don't have that much money. Am I missing anything important from the pathing description?
No, that's a pretty good summary.
And I'm actually not sure where to place it now, because I think the system is actually quite capable. But we built the new system, put that in place, and haven't really adjusted it very much. And I think there's a lot of things we can do with it, but we're not fully there yet, and it's hurting the gameplay a bit, or quite a bit rather. We really don't like hurting or going after elites in Act 2 and 3, for example.
Yeah, I would put it maybe at like high C tier,
Mm-hmm.
so above Ironclad.
Oh yes. We can use the very bad at mouse.
Your mouse is an F tier today.
My mouse is an. I'm using the touchpad so it doesn't click as loud on our mics.
Yeah, so for the pathing, it has a lot of potential, but everything on it right now is hard-coded, so it's not really taking like the strength of the character into account for how much damage it expects to be losing in a hallway fight. We did try to add in a lot of consideration for things like relics, so it realizes, hey, I have Black Star, I'm going to be getting 2 elites, or 2 relics from an elite instead of 1, and then it prefers elites on its calculation for pathfinding. So there is some of that stuff in there that's pretty nice, but the numbers, we basically set them originally with Ironclad, and we haven't updated them since. We didn't make them like grossly character specific or dependent on how you're doing in the run, and that's just where right now it's performing rather poorly. So work to be done there for anybody who feels the urge once it's open sourced.
What is this here, Logan? I don't usually see this.
That's hidden content that's only available in some people's games, not yours, Robert, so you don't have to worry about it.
Ah, good. It looks scary.
Yeah. Yes, it is scary. So the heart is an F tier, and that's because we do not play against the heart as the bot.
I mean, some of us don't play against the heart that much as not the bot either, but yeah, I guess that's not what we're ranking here.
Indeed. Yeah, so the heart in particular, we don't tackle with the bot. We would be interested to, but there is a lack of information that's coming through the comm mod, the communication mod that we use to run the bot. Shout out again to ForgottenArbiter for providing that to the community. It's really, really nice, really useful. But yeah, it has one thing in it where you can't see the flaming elite. It's not coming in on the map info at all. And it's pretty important to be able to kill the flaming elite in order to be able to be getting to the heart the whole time. So we would need to basically go and patch a fix into that mod before we would be able to. And yeah, we haven't done that.
We haven't done that. I mean, to be fair, we totally could, but there's been other things, and it was nice to be able to declare victory with the bot without killing the heart. I understand this also as a player.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and also, even if we did have the ability to get to the heart, I think that the bot would struggle against it. Because you need to have, I think, a much better grasp on deck building than the bot currently does to be able to consistently beat the heart.
You bring a great point up about deck building. That is a thing we should talk about. This is a tricky one. So, just to provide some context for the viewers, the way the deck building works right now is you provide a list of cards that we're interested in having in the deck, and then if the bot sees these cards, it'll pick them up with that priority. So if we're trying to pick up a Blasphemy, we're trying to pick up a Flurry of Blows, but Blasphemy is higher in our pickup list, and we are presented with both of them, then we'll pick up the Blasphemy. There are card limits for these pickups, so if we already have a Blasphemy, we're not going to try to pick up another one, for example. There's also a system we have where we can group these cards, so we can have for example, what we use with Defect is we're looking for Frost Orbs, and we get them we can get frost orbs from a variety of sources, and so we say, all right, we've got 5 frost orbs from this one thing, therefore we don't need to pick up anything from the frost orb group anymore, specifically with the purpose of getting frost orbs at least. These systems work, and especially if you're building the deck list with the knowledge that this is how the deck list is going to work, you can build some decent decks. It's not how you would build a deck list as a S-tier player, though. Definitely, like, you would be thinking a lot more granularly about your decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the time that you get to be an S-tier player, you don't really even think of deck compositions in that way. It's always just a very impromptu analysis based off of your current position and what exactly you need. You're keeping in mind the elites that you know that are coming up next. You know all of the possible hallway fights that you could be running into and can consider, okay, do I need to be taking this cleave even though it's yet another basic common card, but hey, because I have a high chance of running into Gremlin Gang, and I need to have a solution for that, otherwise I potentially could take too much damage. I think that it would need a much different approach to be able to reach like S tier level. But with the grouping, you can already start having still like somewhat intelligent ways to build the deck as opposed to just having like a list of cards you like. Because one of the ways that you can approach the game, or like kind of one of the general concepts you can keep in mind, is that in Act 1 you need damage, because in order to beat the elites in Act 1 you need to be focusing on getting your damage. And then once you have enough damage, then you need to be focusing on getting enough block to be able to survive Act 2. And then once you have enough block to survive all of the 20 damage things that can be hitting you in Act 2, that's when you start having the capacity to go, okay, now I really need to focus on my scaling so that I can beat everything that's coming in Act 3. And the grouping allows you to like basically emulate those heuristics a little bit. So there still can be some decent principles that we can accomplish with it. So for that, I'd put it like low B tier.
Yeah, I'm also fine with B tier, even though both of the deck building systems we've described have their limitations and are kind of enforcing like not strictly correct ways of thinking about the deck building. I still like them from how simple and easy they are. If you're a watcher, you can get away with simple and easy.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
But yeah, let's go with the low B tier then, because we don't want to put everything in C tier. We're happy with some things.
We are.
That was deck building. I think a very closely related topic is upgrading. And upgrading works quite similarly to the first set of deck building I described, where there's just a prioritized list. And so you're very statically going to be going for upgrades on the same cards every run if you have them. I think this works pretty well. We also have some detailed checks. So for example, we don't bother upgrading something to add retain to it if we're already going to be retaining because we have pyramid. Or we don't bother upgrading a cost downwards if we've got a Snecko Eye. But overall, I think it works kind of well, because there's a lot of cards that, like, there are some cards that just do really well with upgrading and other cards that don't do so well. What do you think?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, it's very simple, but I think it's fine.
I'll bump it higher than deck building. Maybe even higher than these two as well. Maybe the last part of deck building is the removal.
Removal of cards, definitely an important part of Spire. I feel that's something that's a little bit underdeveloped with the bot. We could make it do better and smarter things. But we tend to be getting larger decks with the bot anyways. It's pretty happy to pick up a fair amount of cards, and the larger that a deck is, the less impactful that removals are. So even though it's kind of underdeveloped, it's been fine for the level of play that it's at. We basically just have like a static list of cards that we prefer to be getting rid of, and then it'll remove those when it has the option. It knows to remove curses as soon as it can, which is in 99% of cases what you want to be doing. So It's getting the most important stuff out there first. In general, it knows that we don't like strike. I think that it knows that we prefer strikes over defends in general on Watcher, though, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yeah, it could get smarter and better at it, but yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, there's at least one other thing I'd want to add, which is like we've increased the coverage on some of our characters quite a bit. Like we're missing maybe 3-4 cards from Watcher, similar for Defect, I think. That means the bot can be more open to transforms, but there are still going to be cases where you transform into something that is just not very useful. And I would like it if our removal would also start respecting the card pickup list. So not only removing from the removal list, but also if it's not on the pickup list, maybe we don't want it. But then with a low priority of removal.
Yeah, that could be something, definitely. I think that we had that case in our recent Watcher video, actually, where it threw out the Conjure Blade, which creates the Expunger.
Yeah, I checked that one. It's because I actually added that one to the removal list.
Nice, good job.
Shall we just quickly put removal into C tier, maybe?
Yeah, it can be C tier, maybe a bit above Ironclad.
Because that gives me actually a nice transition to Falling, because I was confused because it was in Falling event that I had added all this extra logic of, okay, let's in this specific case get rid of this, and this other case remove that, and if it's not on the pickup list, it's probably low priority, so then we can get rid of that.
Yes. Wait, so this is specifically the Falling event?
This is specifically the Falling event. I'm proud of the Falling event, Logan. It is.
Oh, but we're not including the best event then.
Oh, there's an event here. You can talk about events with question mark.
Yeah, okay.
As far as I'm concerned, the Falling event is the best event right now, because every time it shows up, I'm like, oh no, did you really have to get rid of that card? And then I check the state, and I'm like, yeah, it's good you got rid of that card.
Nice. Yeah, I actually don't know that much about the Falling event, because it works how it should, so I haven't dove into it. So, yeah, 2 thumbs up on that one.
Ha, ignorance is bliss, once again.
Indeed. That's my approach to this game.
I say Falling event is S tier, and since you haven't checked it, you can't say any differently.
There we go.
People might come back and call me on the S tier once they've checked the code for it, though.
I was hoping that we could do the Sucking Ooze event, though. That's what I thought the hand was doing, was grasping for the Relic and Sucking Ooze, because that is by far the most S tier thing that we have.
The Scrap Ooze is the event where you have a small percentage chance of finding a relic if you take some damage, and then each time you take some damage, the chance increases that you get a relic. And like any self-respecting human player, the bot will keep trying to get the relic at any cost. Any cost, Logan.
Yes, and that's one place where it plays better than me. Like, for me, if I see that, hey, if I click this button, I'm gonna die, I tend to chicken out a little bit. But the bot, no, it just goes full steam ahead and is like, this is what I'm doing. And for that, it's definitely S tier level.
Good. I'm glad we agreed. I remember in the early days you were still questioning the decision making there a bit, but I'm glad you came around.
I mean, I even do that in some of my own games right now. It's like, okay, I might be on a winning streak right now, but I have to press the button. I've learned from the bot. It has taught me things.
What's our next topic?
Maybe just events in general, since we're already hitting them.
Events are tricky, and events are probably one of the most manual areas of our bot behavior at the moment. Basically, we've got a list of all the events, and then we've got decisions for each of these events that are partially informed by the state the bot finds itself in. There are some that are very static, like the Scrap Ooze event, where we just will attempt to take the relic at any cost. There are events like the Bite Card event, which is the Vampires event in Act 2. And there we've actually got quite a bit of logic now. Most events fall somewhere a little bit in between these two examples. And yeah, we make semi-informed decisions in a lot of events, but a lot of them are also just very, we blanket take this one. Yeah. I'm okay with a B.
Yeah, I'm thinking B as well. Yeah, it could make more dynamic use of them, but it doesn't really need to.
I think the part I'm most unhappy with the events is just purely from a technical perspective, where it's not pretty how we've done it, and but I'm fine with functionality.
Yeah, I also miss it a little bit on the pathfinding, because one of the things that the bot theoretically could be good about is kind of being able to expect what events may be coming, keeping in mind what events have happened, and like anticipating their value. And I saw that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that like it should be able to utilize in pathfinding, and right now it doesn't. So it's not actually an events thing, it's a pathfinding thing, but I would like to see that at some point.
Yeah, I moved Defect and Silent around because I had forgotten that we could also be rating things horizontally, and I figured we were slightly happier with Defect than with Silent.
Probably, like as far as the bot's performance, yes. I Defect still just has like a lot of potential that we haven't tapped into yet with scaling, but still just like straight up on the way that it plays, yeah, I agree that it's above Silent for us.
And events are somewhere here. I think we've got a nice solid middle area where our events better than Silent becomes hard to judge.
Yeah, we have a fair amount of things there in the middle, but I think that shows that if you have kind of solid in the middle gameplay, you still can consistently get wins at Ascension 0.
Let us see what else we've got. I'm going to pick this one. This was meant to represent boss relics.
Mm-hmm. And Busted Crown was the relic that you wanted to represent boss relics.
It's the best one, Logan.
I mean, yeah, that's also why you don't ever see the heart, right?
Correlation, not causation.
Fair enough. I can't prove it.
I'm actually not sure where to place this one yet, so I'm going to talk for a little bit, and then hopefully you have something clever to say about where it should be placed. But
okay.
This is in similar to our upgrading list. We have a prioritization for our boss relics. Ooh, I have to explain the concept. We have certain configurations of the bots that we call strategies, and a strategy contains all of the bots' decision making, like what cards do we want to pick up, what events do we want to take, what cards do we want to remove, stuff like that. And you can have, so far we only have one strategy for Watcher, which is a sort of stance thing, but you can have multiple strategies per character. So for Defect, for example, we have the more orb focused strategy that we showed a video of, and we've got the Claws Law video. Anyway, the boss relics are also a part of each strategy, and if you've picked cards in a certain way and you're planning to play in a certain way, then you have, I think, a fairly decent idea of what boss relics are important for your play and how you would value them according to each other. And so the boss relics list is just a static list of, we like this boss relic more than this other one, pick accordingly. And it's partially adjusted based on, hey, do we have enough energy already and stuff like that. But it's very simple, but I think it very much does its job as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Though for rating it by how happy it makes us, then I would probably put it in C tier. Because it makes me a little unhappy how effective it is just using this priority list. Like, you know, I'll sit there for a minute or two and, you know, like really start to think and dive into, okay, what relic should I be getting now? Should I actually be skipping it in this instance or whatever? And the bot just has a list that it picks from, like, on priority. And this is actually, like, correct most of the time. It's rather rare that I, in the end, would pick something that it doesn't. And that kind of ticks me off a little bit because it might be a part of the game that I overcomplicate for myself sometimes.
So where do we put it?
Somewhere in the B or C realm. So yeah, end of B. Feels kind of right.
I mean, what would we do to improve it?
Yeah, so it doesn't take into account the deck that you have in play as you're building it. It does take into account other boss relics, I believe, but nothing else. So
it partially takes the deck into account, so not the state of the deck, but the ideal of the deck we're working towards, basically.
Yeah, the deck that we're working towards, but that's also a bit of a high roll because, like for instance, if you are playing silent and you're just going like in general with picking up a lot of discard cards because that's a really good way to play silent, you would be very happy to get the energy up on discard Relic. However, if you are in end of Act 1, you're being offered that Relic, or you're being offered the hammer, runic hammer. One of those is guaranteed energy, one of them is not. So if you don't have any discards at that time, you don't have other than Survivor, and if you don't have any energy relics that you've picked up, then it might be wrong to pick that up instead of one of the more consistent energy relics if you need energy in your deck. But like, we don't really consider, hey, what is the average cost of the cards that are in our deck to be justifying whether we need to be prioritizing energy relics right now or not. We're not really saying, hey, do we have a happy flower, because that is actually very important for energy. Do we have a lantern? So yeah, paying more attention to what our current relics and cards would inform this in a much nicer manner. But in the end, like, there's just some very strong relics, like in general always having more energy is good, and when your potion usage is abysmal, then picking up Sozus is pretty much always going to be a correct pick. So for the way that the bot plays, like, it tends to be just fine.
All right, I think I'm overall feeling more positive about this one than you are, but I'm fine with it being here, and I can't fully shake the feeling that I'm feeling positive about it because I see the broken crown, and I like that. I like it. So
fair enough.
So let's leave it here then.
Yeah, until I look away, and then
since we're on the questionably looking icons used to represent game mechanics here, this is the astrolabe, but it's intended to represent transforming.
I mean, we already hit transforming a little bit, right?
A little bit. I mean, we didn't talk about it specifically. It's largely our performance with transforming, I think, is largely a function of how much coverage we have in the character. So transforming is fun and cool when we have high coverage on the character, like Defect or Watcher. It's really bad in Ironclad, where our coverage isn't that great, and every card that we get in the deck that we don't know is essentially a curse because we can't play it if the bot doesn't know it.
Yeah, true. But by now we've actually rectified that for the most part. Like, what is our card coverage right now? How many cards are left, do you know of, that the bot doesn't know how to play?
So I think there's four missing on Watcher, probably something similar for Defect. Maybe something similar for Silent. With Silent we also have stuff like Poison, where we know how it works, but we won't necessarily apply it with the priority it should get. And I don't really know our coverage for Ironclad right now. Like, overall we're high 90%, I'd say. Coverage wise, maybe low 90 because there's some colorless cards. Anyway, our coverage is pretty good by now.
Yeah, and it just uses our our card removal priority system, right?
Yeah.
Does it try to transform curses?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, good.
I've never seen it try to, at least.
Maybe we just always remove them before we get a transform.
Is there anything that would make us happier about this transform handling? Like, so far we've talked about basically opting into the transform or not, which doesn't directly relate to the transform behavior of the bot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there's that much choice in transforming anyways, right? Like, all that you're choosing is the opt-in. So I guess if we wanted to make transforms better, it would just be having better strategy coverage, like, of how to use cards effectively in battle, as opposed to just knowing, this adds poison, and poison does damage, but knowing poison does damage over multiple turns, and I need to take into account the damage that it's doing next turn and the turn after if I'm trying to beat something with higher HP.
I'm going to go out there with a bold statement and say I'm okay with transform.
All right. I'm fine with that as well. Like, yeah, the only way to be improving transform would be to just improve a lot of other general mechanics. So let's hit it.
Yeah, no, not here, but here. How about that?
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I get a little bit less excited about it than I do boss relics. So.
Something you are very excited about, Logan, is the pen nib. And this wasn't meant to represent specifically the pen nib, but pen nib is a great contender for this. It's supposed to represent our mini optimization of bumping up counters when we know we've won the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Please gush about this now, Logan. This makes you happy.
Yes. So it's always a pain to be trying to watch your relics and optimize for them. If you get a chance, like, you should be leaving Happy Flower on too. You should be like bringing Pen Nib up to somewhere in the higher numbers, depending on what your deck looks like. And yeah, the bot is really good about recognizing that. All the time when I'd watch it, it would, be playing with Pen Nib, and I would be wondering why it's just not killing the enemy yet, and it's because it was just trying to stack relics. So for that, I think it remembers to do it much more often than I do as a player.
Yeah.
So for that, I would put it somewhere in the we're happy with this, which would be like A tier.
Mm-hmm.
It still is lacking a little bit because if you want to be playing for S tier on relic stacking, you'll also delay turns. Like, if you know that you're in a safe fight, it's totally legitimate to just be waiting a turn or two to get your relic stack to be more effective in the next fight. And it doesn't think to do that at all. Yeah, maybe below Watcher, but above Disrespect. Let's get into battles, I guess.
Mm-hmm. You have narrowed it down by half, which is good.
Let's start with the hallway fights.
Mm-hmm. All right, so hallway fights. There's some things that characterize hallway fights, at least compared to the other fights. Mostly they're short, which is very good for the bot, because the bot is good at optimizing for single turns, and if you only have to optimize 2 turns, that's great. If you have to optimize 15 turns, then turn 1 is ideally already taking turns 2 through 15 into account, which is something the bot is not so great at. But hallway fights don't have that many 15-turn situations. So, I don't know, we're pretty good here. I mean, not great, but decent.
Yeah, I would put this also somewhere in A tier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's definitely things that we can improve on. There's a couple of places.
Are you crying?
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm crying because it's so beautiful. No, I had a frog in my throat. No, there's a couple of enemies in particular that we can struggle with a little bit, and it all revolves around the concept of scaling. Like, scaling is probably the biggest weakness of the bot. Is like, it doesn't inherently understand it, and so we always have to kind of manually program in scaling concepts. But in most hallway fights, it doesn't need it, so it can have a little bit of trouble against, like, Shelled Parasite, the avocado, or sometimes like some snake plant kind of things can be a bit tricky too, or the Tangela.
Spaghetti monster.
Yeah, the spaghetti monster. So the spaghetti monster can really mess with it because it doesn't understand the problem of getting a curse into its deck, or even that it will get a curse into its deck randomly. It's just like mixing all of the things that it's bad at understanding into one monster there. But apart from those, like, yeah, hallway fights are pretty straightforward, and they're not about scaling. It's just about, hey, are you playing your hand efficiently, and paying a little bit of attention to how the rest of the fight is going to go. And so for that, I think that it can conduct itself, like, pretty efficiently in most hallway fights. It's rare that I look at it and go, oh, I would have performed much better in that hallway fight.
Brings us to elites. Elites are often fights that have gotten a little bit of attention from us. Because if you play certain elite fights wrong, your run just ends. So for example, it was pretty important to teach the bot that we don't usually like playing skills against Gremlin Knob, because he gets angrier, and that's a bad thing. So we're pretty decent at the Act 1 elites, because there's so much of a barrier early game, we were kind of forced to tell the bot how to play around them. So for example, for Gremlin Nub, we avoid playing skills unless it looks like the fight is going to end soon, and therefore we can maybe on the second last turn get a little bit more damage blocked than we otherwise would. For the sentries, we try to gun one of them down as quickly as reasonable, and for Lagavulin, we postpone waking him up until we can power up a little bit in case we have that option. But some of the other elite fights we don't do as well at because we haven't run into them as often, because we sort of just avoid a lot of them, and we're not always playing around their specific mechanic.
I think that one exception to that might be Giant Head.
Yeah.
Because Giant Head, like the scaling part and knowing that big hits are going to be coming later, that part we don't necessarily play around, so we're not like hyper focused on scaling in the first 2 or 3 turns. But the what is it, slow or something like that is the name of the status debuff that you put onto Giant Head for every card that you play. And that actually we did teach the bot about, so it recognizes that it's going to continuously do more and more damage the more cards that it plays. So for that one it'll adjust its playstyle a little bit. But I don't think, apart from Giant Head, there's any special considerations that we have for elites outside of Act 1.
I'd go for C with elites.
Yeah, I would do that as well. It works, but it's definitely something that we could be improving, both on picking... It's kind of 2 things. Like, one would be improving the way that it scales, and then the second is just knowing more about the specific mechanics of the elites that would allow you to basically manipulate the fight better.
Maybe bosses then? I mentioned how with elites we have some specific behaviors for bosses. Some specific behaviors for the elites because they were in Act 1 because they were such a barrier. We have a similar approach to the bosses, and we've got I think 1 or 2 bosses where we've got specific behaviors, but we've also just got a whole different set of battle behavior that we use for bosses, which is, hey, do we think this is going to be a big and long fight? And then we put a little bit more emphasis on powering up rather than just quickly ending the fight. And this seems to mostly work, and there's definitely still room for improvement with some of the fights, like when you're facing the Collector and maybe you see he's summoning, so maybe you don't want to finish off one of the small birds at low health because he's just going to summon a full health one to replace it. We don't know about things like that, but largely it seems to be okay at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the main thing that we could do would be to refine that power scaling aspect, because right now it still is just kind of a general proclivity to playing things that are scaling in these fights. And we could apply like some of the calculation to make it know when it's able to do it more effectively. Like sometimes it's worth taking, the 20 hit of damage to the face and turn 1 against the champ because you get to play your demon form. It doesn't really think about those things all that well. So I'd think that the power improvement on it for scaling would be great. But apart from that, most of the time that it's messing up in boss fights, it's not necessarily because of a poor handling of the boss fight. It's more because of the deck building up to that point, or because we haven't got the resources or the rewards, like from pathfinding, to be able to be effective against the boss as we'd like. So I think that could go in B also then.
Here?
Sure.
Cool. What we've got remaining is Campfire decision making, shopping, and the treasure chest. And I only accidentally included the treasure chest because it was one of the map icons, and so I was like, we probably need that one. So I didn't have a specific one in mind for when we started, but by now I've thought of one. Are we good at opening chests, Logan?
I think that we're great at opening chests.
And
we open them, except for when we shouldn't.
exactly. And so there's a surprising amount of complexity that goes into opening chests, actually. And it turns out that one of the things to keep in mind is that you don't want to be opening too many chests if you have Cursed Key in your deck.
Yep, that's one I forget all the time myself as well.
B tier.
B tier?
B tier, yeah.
What would you do to improve chest opening?
So, for example, we still happily open an unnecessary chest right before the final boss. If we have no hope of removing the curse, just because our logic for the curses right now is, hey, don't open the chest if you have a curse already.
Wait, our logic is don't open the chest if you have a curse already?
Yeah.
So if you have no curse, but you have Cursed Key, it'll still open it?
Yes. Because we like relics, but not right before the final boss, you see.
Okay, so it's like if you think that you'll be able to get rid of it, that was our logic. Like, eventually you'll be able to get rid of it. It's worth it.
Because we weren't reaching the final boss as often, so it used to not be really an issue.
True. Yeah, that's one that if we do a refinement pass, we can probably just adjust the numbers so that it's just never opens it if it would be getting a curse, and we just make it take a little bit more difficult paths to fight more elites.
Shopping.
So the problem with shopping is it kind of takes a lot of our other weaknesses and
opportunities,
dependent on them.
It takes a lot of our
it takes all of our opportunities, and then it decides to leave our opportunities there so that we can capitalize on our opportunities later. It's being foresightful. So some of the main things that you want to be doing in shops: you want to be removing cards, you want to be buying cards for deck building, and you want to be buying potions. I think that it, in a way, does potions perfectly because it doesn't buy them because we don't use them well. But that still is quite an opportunity that's missed. Our card removal is in tier C, and that kind of makes the shop also, and that's that tier as well. And for deck building, it still would only be looking for cards that fill, hey, am I like achieving this like pre-made concept of a deck that we have that we're trying to reach. But one of the most important things about shops is when you can like specifically be finding a card that fills a role in your deck that you're missing, or that's solving a very specific problem that you have coming up. And I don't think that we have any of that logic in shops right now.
I'll do you one worse. We're not actually looking to fill out our preconceived notion of the deck that exists as, hey, get these cards. We have a separate list for the shop. For example, I think we buy Rushdown if it's there with Watcher, but other things are not in there because we're not like respecting card limits in there, and we're not. It's all a little bit of a mess. Like our shop is quite powerful, but extremely limited and extremely static.
Yeah, no, I forgot about that. That's a perfect example of clean code, like making sure that you duplicate logic in multiple places and have it differing. This is definitely how we want to be approaching our programming projects here. I think that it belongs in C tier. It might even be below our card removal. The only thing it has going for us is that it has a list of relics that it likes to pick up, and it does fairly decently with that. Like, yes. I actually, after watching the bot, I started buying more relics in the shop because I don't know if I was being too conservative, but like I wouldn't really spend money on relics just because they're so expensive, and it's like, oh, but there might be good cards that I can buy in the next shop, or you know, this, I don't like that I'm getting like 3 discards worth of money on buying this one relic. But pen nib is really good. Like, it's really good.
You do have to count it though, but yes.
That's true. So maybe the bot taught me to start counting it, and then I started appreciating pen nib.
It's a very low bar we're clearing, by the way. You said we're happy with the relic buying. So yeah, I mean, we tell the bot to buy certain relics, and it buys those relics. That's good job, bot.
Fair enough. Yeah, low bar. So what's the last one for us?
Last one is campfire decisions. So there's resting, there's upgrading, and then there's a bunch of other ones if you've got certain relics. So you can dig, or you can purge, or you can lift weights. You can also get the red heart key, but that's not really relevant right now. The way the main two decisions are made, or rather the one main decision is made, is do we need to rest or not? That's, I think, mostly still done just based on, hey, do we have enough HP? And for the most part, HP is defined as, do we have more than 65% of our health? If not, let's rest. And that threshold is a bit higher for the final boss. And this mostly seems to work, actually. We could eke out a bit more in some cases, and I think we do. Like, I think we're less aggressive on resting if we've got the what's it called? It's not the pentagraph. Yeah, it's pentagraph. So there's some cases like this that we take into account. It mostly seems to work, and like it's a little complicated with the amount of different things you have to weigh against each other once you've got also the ability to remove stuff and also the ability to lift weights. But I'm overall satisfied with it. Like, it can definitely be better though.
Yeah, when looking at it, I think that it'd probably be one of the last things that I would try to improve, because it accomplishes all that it needs to for now. Like, the main way to improve it would be like improving pathing, so that pathing can determine whether to be going to more campfires or fewer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it pretty smartly handles all of the different relics that it has. And if there were anything to change, it might just be slight balancing tweaks on, hey, the bot is getting better at playing cards, which means that we will increase upgrade value slightly and decrease dig value or something like that. But I'd still put it like in low A tier, just because it keeps in mind pentagraph. Like, I forget pentagraph so often, and it knows these things. It makes sure to, like, it values the campfires and uses the campfires properly for curse removal when you have it. So I think it does just fine.
I think that's the end of our list. Do you have anything to still share, Logan?
No. I wish that we would have done this earlier when we were still doing some of the like fundamental programming in the bot, and not this far into its development, because I think it's very insightful on, okay, what should we be working on next to improve?
Yeah, it was quite fun also. It was also nice to reflect on how far we've come with some of these.
Yeah, there's been a lot of effort that's gone into this, and it's easy for us to take a lot of these like simple systems for granted, but there's been quite a bit of complexity put into them. So
cool. I am happy we did this. I'm happy we're going to be able to share this with people in the video, and I'm hoping this is useful for anyone who decides to take a look at the code and make some improvements. I think we're done for today then. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Logan, for the discussion. Keep an eye out for the bot going open source. Let us know if you have a question by leaving a comment, or I guess you can also leave a comment if you have a comment. Give us a like, subscribe if you want to stay up to date, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.